Hello freaks, geeks, degenerates, basement dwellers, butnicks, and scrufftards. Welcome to the Warzone. I'm Scruffy, and this is Scruffy Tales. And we're gonna take a look at a lot of stuff happening along the front line, but the main key takeaway is that Ukraine has more than likely liberated the town of Kindrativka in Sumy Oblast. Uh, while at the same time stalling Russian advances elsewhere for the time being. I mean, uh, taking a look at it a day at a time doesn't really give you the grand perspective. So things might change tomorrow. But for now, Ukraine has liberated Kindrativka. Right, so Andrew Perpetua's map, interesting stuff happening. Uh, if we zoom in, he has, this is, here you have a Ukrainian drone strike, right? Indicating, according to Andrew, that Russia has made a move into Kindrativka because he had the entire area as Ukrainian. But switching over to Mayakovsk 73, his interpretation is that this part here was under Russian control or contested, and Ukraine has now pushed in, forcing Russia down to this corner if we have Russians left in the area. And if we move to the Ukraine control map, take a look at this. Blue dots are Ukrainian attacks on Russians. So this is, or rather the opposite, sorry. This is Russian attacks on Ukrainian positions. So here you have from the 20th, so yesterday. So this is Russian Molnia 2 strike on Kindrativka. This is Ukrainian strikes on Russian strikes on Ukrainian positions, and Russian strikes on Ukrainian positions. This is, that one is from the 21st. Today, as of recording, Russian airstrike on Ukrainian positions. So Ukraine has clearly moved in and are, pushing the Russians out in this area as of late. So I'm thinking that this map is accurate. We can see Russian strikes on Ukrainians as they're moving in, taking back this part of town. And the reason is simple. I haven't updated my map yet, but this is what it was like a couple of days ago, when Ukraine pushed in north into Kindrativka, forced the Russians to fall back, and then the Russians were trapped in this part of town and basically isolated because they had no way of moving in resources, so they had to fly them in with drones. And that just slowed logistics down. You can't move in enough drones, and the Ukrainians, they felt that they were on the verge of taking the town. So they have now since then pushed into these streets to clear out the rest of town from any Russians. So I think that is what has happened. Ukraine has made a final push to reclaim the entire town. And I think that is where we are at the moment. Kindrativka is back under Ukrainian control. Maybe we might have some pockets of resistance along this street. But overall, Kindrativka has been liberated by Ukraine. So that means Kindrativka and Andrivka both have been liberated by the Ukrainians. There's some pushes on Oleksivka. We can see fighting going on to the west of Varychne. If we move over here, Varychne here, you can see this is an older engagement where you have Russians up here. This is from the 17th, where Russians are trying to, you can see here how they're trying to sneak along this dent in the terrain, and then they got hit by Ukrainian drones on the 17th. This is a couple of days old as well. On the 15th, Russia taking out an Ukrainian M113 trying to rotate troops in this windbreak here. So you have fighting ongoing in and around Varychne, quite obviously here. So yeah, what else? Yeah, I think, yeah, Russia has moved south in Yakivka. This was a stalemate for the longest of time, but now it appears as if we head on over here. Take a look. This is from the 14th. Russian forces hit in Yakivka, clearly indicating that they have moved south. More than likely managed to come down this way and move through these woods. The front line used to be more or less along the main road here, the main street, and was that way for the longest of time. And then Russia has managed to push down along this forested area here, and they were eventually intercepted by the 156th Mechanized Brigade. Is that would be these guys. So yeah, and we also know that Russia has made some gains south of Yablonivka, reclaiming these windbreaks here, as indicated here. You can see that they have taken the territory and moved in south of that road as well in Yakivka. So at the moment, on the western flank, Ukraine has the advantage, and on the right flank, the eastern flank, Russia has the advantage. It's kind of pivoting. This is the center, I mean, it's moving up this way and moving south this way, the front line. If we go back to my map, though, you can see here how Kindrativka, how important it is, because if we map out, as I've done, where you can find cover and not just, draw a line across all these fields, then you can see that if Ukraine takes Kindrativka, it's not all that much territory that the Russians are actually capable of defending in this part of the Sumy Oblast battlefield. Russia has very few positions that they can defend. I mean, they're not going to be defending these fields. They're not going to have troops. Maybe if there's the odd trench line going straight across. But generally speaking, this is not where you will have troops. They will be in the valleys, in the woods, in the forests, and up in the towns, right? So if Ukraine can take Kindrativka, there's very little territory along the western flank that Russia can hold and contest. Meaning, I mean, this lake, we've seen Ukraine bombing boats that Russia is trying to use to get across the lake. If Ukraine takes Kindrativka, the western flank here, it's in a lot of trouble if they rely on boats to get across. If drones can fly here and patrol and take out these boats that the Russians are trying to use, all of a sudden the troops in this valley and windbreak, the troops in this windbreak, they are in trouble. And Ukraine should be able to push in and reclaim these windbreaks and these valleys and these lakes. And then the question is, well, Konstantinivka is right on the border. Russia can more freely move troops up to it, I guess. So Ukraine might not be able to reclaim this village, but they can certainly move in north of Andriivka, and all of a sudden they are in a position to threaten and outflank Oleksivka. This will, of course, not happen tomorrow. This is going to take time. Ukraine is outnumbered 3-1 in Sumy Oblast. Russia has the advantage, 3-1 advantage, which makes it all the more incredible that Ukraine is actually able to push in and liberate Kindrativka and Andriivka. They are outnumbered, they're outgunned, but they can still maneuver, they can still push and take the fight to the enemy. So yeah, this is important. Kindrativka, not just liberating a town, but they can now push into the few positions Russia has left. And if Ukraine can move up along this lake and reach the border, I mean, the propaganda win of Ukraine being able to tell Ukrainians, tell the world that they pushed Russia back to the border in Sumy Oblast. That is no small thing, and of course Russia will allocate resources to this area to prevent that from happening. If Ukraine pushes them back to the border, it's a disaster for the Russians, and they will try and prevent it. They're going to move more troops over here to gain a larger numerical advantage. And those troops will, of course, come from other places, other sections of the front line, such as down here. So you're going to be seeing more troops being moved from the front line down here up to Kursk to fight in Sumy. The whole point of the Kursk incursion. I've talked about this before. We're now in the third phase of the Kursk incursion, where you set up the trap within Sumy. Ukraine knew this would happen eventually. Here we are, and they are now pushing back as planned, grinding down the Russians as planned, forcing Russia to allocate more and more troops into Kursk, where they have been effectively removed from Ukraine. Mission success. So that's Kursk and Sumy Oblast and Tetkino. Tetkino, I haven't talked about Tetkino yet. I was on Sumy. Let's jump on over to Tetkino. We have... was it this one? Yeah, these are the airstrikes from a couple of days ago that we talked about. That, you know, maybe Russia's pushing down this way to come down here and thereby cutting off the factory. But why are I mean, the bridge is destroyed. So why? Because some of these strikes have been aimed at the bridge. Does that mean Russia is trying to come across the bridge, or move over to this side? I don't get it. Fog of war. Unclear what they're targeting. Are they trying to take out the bridge? Because there are images of airstrikes aimed at the bridge, even though it's already destroyed. So I don't know. But anyway, sidetracked. This is essentially the situation in Tetkino. We can, I guess we can adjust. Somewhat, right? Let's adjust somewhat. Let's make it like this. I think. Right? This is the bridge that they've been bombing, and then maybe Russia might have pushed in this way. Yeah, sorry. That's gonna have to bit. Fuck it. So this is kind of the situation in Tetkino. I haven't updated the map. That Russia is pushing in this way to reach these buildings, and as you can see, it's difficult for the Ukrainians to come in since you have open spaces down here. It's at this point it's difficult to reach the factory if Russia is in control of these buildings. Interesting is that Russia appears to have made a push this way through Saria and out of Vilfinsky, maybe down here, to reach Basalfka. Basalfka is a town in Ukraine that is now contested, and no further updates. It is an important town, lots of cover. It leads straight up to the border. You can move through cover and enter Russia in cover, and then fan out within Russia proper. If Russia is now contesting this town, as you can see, Ukraine has to move across wide open spaces to reach their positions, and that means it's easier to hunt them down with drones and what have you. So an important town for Russia to push into to disrupt Ukrainian operations. Absolutely. This portion here, Novoput, used to be Ukrainian. Russia has since then pushed them out. But this, I think this is an okay representation of the situation in Tetkino and Sumy Oblast. Okay, so moving on. We're gonna move on. Vovchansk, not much happening here. This is the area we need to keep an eye on. Can Russia continue to move troops across the river and keep pushing into the forest? We've had Ukrainian drone strikes down here as well as up here, so Russia is clearly pushing in, crossing the river. No updates in the last day or two. Over here, anything? Not that much. No. Russia is trying to push out of Milove towards Katnia. We'll see if they pull that off. Stalemate north of Kupiansk. Not much is happening, as you can see. Not much going on at all. Ukrainian drone attack. Russian guided missile strike. Not much happening here either. This is basically the area where something is happening. If we go back a day or two, Russian artillery strikes up here and then down here. So they're clearly trying to engage the Ukrainians in this valley here in order to be able to push up and probably surround this pocket and threaten to close the gap here and force the Ukrainians over here to fall back. So that's going on here. Artillery, more artillery, and the Russians are trying to move in on the flanks here. Yeah, is this an actual advance towards Siversk? Yeah, take a look. It took them how long? 3 years? Wow. So an actual advance towards Siversk. Haven't seen that in a while. And massive Russian artillery shells or rocket shells aimed at Siversk itself. Stalemate, basically. Yeah, Russia is slowly grinding north in towards Yablanivka. This is a tough nut to crack. Ukraine is defending Yablanivka and the surrounding areas here like the devil himself. The push across the river north of Mirnorod, not much happening. As you can see, let's see, when did this happen? We got this update on, this is 13th, 14th, so a week ago, and not much else has happened, and I guess that's not so strange. I mean, they have to get across this river to reinforce their positions, not much, and I mean, they're going uphill as well, as you can see here. It's an uphill fight, and you have Ukrainians all over the place with few approach points. You can see here the green, this is essentially where they can move. And then you have lakes that, are natural obstacles funneling the Russians into these kill zones here between the lakes or north of it. It's easy for the Ukrainians to aim artillery and drones and hunt them down. So it's not that strange that this push, once Russia got across, stalled. I'm thinking they are now focusing on building up defenses to hold this beachhead on the western side of the river so that they can build up forces here and then make another push trying to push out. That would be my guess. So yeah, Ukraine is still holding on to this pocket. I thought you can see here though that they're slowly pushing back. The Ukrainians, the Russians, that is not strange, but I'm thinking that why are they holding this? Are they cut off and can't leave? Is that it? Because if they could leave, they should leave, right? So chances are that they are cut off and are unfortunately fighting to the last man. Going down to the massive Russian advance, not much is going on. You can see here, last time we got a map update was on the 16th. And since then, not much is happening here. Remember how when we took a look at the map that detailed Ukrainian defensive positions, along this river here is an empty space of wide open, hardly any defenses. Ukraine has built their defenses along the river instead. So Russia has moved up through an area where you have few defenses, and the same thing was true for up here. Very few defenses up here as well. So Russia's moved into areas where there are no defenses, and once they reach defensive lines, they appear to be stuck. So why did Ukraine leave empty areas with hardly any defenses at all? Maybe the plan was, since they have fortified the river so heavily on the northern side, that when the Russians moved in here, they were under constant fire and drone attacks from these heavily fortified positions. They moved through minefields, and that is what's happening. They have moved into carefully planned kill zones. Maybe. Ukraine left these areas wide open for a reason after all. And now Russia has moved up to where Ukraine has defenses, and now they're stuck by the looks of it. Essentially the same thing here. Ukraine, this area had very few defensive positions according to the maps. So Russia moved up north, got stuck on the defensive line, headed west, managed to get across the river. I'm still a bit surprised about that, to be honest. But beyond the river, you once again have pockets with very few Ukrainian defensive positions, and that is where Russia is trying to push in, and that is probably where Ukraine has prepared to aim everything in the arsenal, knowing that Russia would follow these empty spaces, path of least resistance, and they are walking into one artillery barrage after the other, being hunted down by hundreds of drones in the process. More than likely trying to cross through minefields as well. That's my interpretation. I'll see if I can remember to show you on that specific map just how Russia has moved along the wide open spaces. Moving down here, this is interesting. We've seen Russia attacking, pushing up, coming up here towards Plavny, but what is this? Take a look. Ukraine has pushed the Russians back. Ukraine is moving down towards the coast, and there's a real possibility that the Russians over here might get trapped and surrounded and cut off. Unless they might be able to move along this path here, this road. Is this a road? I think it's a road. Yeah, maybe Russia can flee along these road banks here. But they are certainly in trouble over here. A bit unexpected, actually. Again, I mean, Ukraine is outnumbered, and all of a sudden you see them fighting back. Small scale, but still, they're doing it. And speaking of outnumbered, in the Pokrovsk area, the estimate is that Ukraine is outnumbered 5-1. So for every Ukrainian, there's 5 Russians. And this is interesting. It's really interesting because it makes sense. Because if you want to attack fortified positions, trench lines, foxholes, bunkers, that so where the enemy has had time to prepare a defensive line, conventional wisdom says you need a 5-1 advantage to successfully conduct that assault. So having 5-1 in Russia having a 5-1 advantage makes perfect sense. It's what they should be doing. But why aren't they moving faster? Why aren't they overcoming these trench lines faster? Well, drones. Drones is the issue now. It used to be mines when the Ukrainians were under attack. Now it's drones. Russia needs more than 5-1 to push past the drone cover. Right? When they reach the trenches, they need 5-1. But to get past the drones, they probably need 10-1 or 15-1 in order to have enough troops when they reach the trenches where they need 5-1, right? And if they only have 5-1, as you can imagine, the advance is extremely slow if they need 10 or 15-1 to successfully push through Ukrainian lines. And also, with all this in mind, if they have a 5-1 advantage here, they are in trouble if they want to push into Myrnorod and Pokrovsk. Because in Myrnorod and Pokrovsk, highly urban areas, conventional wisdom says that you need a 10-to-1 advantage. And with drones, that has probably increased to 20-to-1 or 30-to-1. You need a 30-to-1 advantage to be able to win any given firefight, because drones are dropping in all over the place. They're attacking your rear, they're attacking your supplies, they're hunting you down when you're hunkering down in a bombed out shelter or building. So if they only have 5-to-1 advantage in the Pokrovsk area trying to push in, and I mean that's why they're struggling, that's why they haven't pushed past Kotlina, that's why they're currently stuck on Rasine. They don't have enough troops to push through Ukrainian defenses. And it's going to get much, much worse in Pokrovsk and Myrnorod. Much, much worse. And the question is Russia prepared for it? They know it, obviously, since they haven't pushed it. They've been outside of Pokrovsk and Myrnorod for a year, if not more. They know how difficult it is to push into these two cities. That is why they're trying to come around on the flanks. Has Russia truly the manpower and resources required to fight in these two cities at present? Maybe if they begin pulling troops from every other battlefield along the front line, but what happens then? Everything else slows down, right? Everything else slows down. And also, if Ukraine has success in Sumy, and Russia needs to strengthen their positions in Kursk at Tetkino, make sure Ukraine doesn't push them out of Sumy. This is going to draw resources. All of a sudden, Kursk and Pokrovsk will demand every resource that the Russians can muster. What happens with the rest of the front line? Pokrovsk, I've said it before, Ukraine has a chance. It's not a guarantee, but they do have a chance to crush the Russian army in Pokrovsk and at Myrnorod. And this battle could be the battle that in the end becomes the turning point in war. For both sides, say that Ukraine is determined to grind down the Russians in Pokrovsk and Myrnorod, and they just send in troops. If the Russians can inflict tremendous casualties on the Ukrainians here, that of course will affect the Ukrainian war effort. Just as if Ukraine can hold and just inflict casualties upon casualties as the Russians are trying to push in, that will also obviously reduce Russian capabilities for years to come if Ukraine can actually hold the line within these two cities. So this is a massive gamble for both armies, I think. I think both armies, they know they can be destroyed in Pokrovsk, and both armies also know they can destroy the enemy army within these two cities. I'm thinking this is gonna be one hell of a fight the moment it kicks off in earnest. So this is the famous image of all the Ukrainian defensive lines. Like I've said before, it's been online forever. If the Russians are aware of it, and this has been a thing the entire war. Civilians have mapped out defensive positions since 2022, and put it up on Twitter or X or whatever, or Instagram. I mean, there are no secrets in this war. It's mind-boggling. Anyway, take a look at this. This here, right here is Bahatyr. Bahatyr was down here, and at the time this map was made, Russia had not yet taken Bahatyr. But as you can see, when they advanced, they had that main push past Bahatyr along the river up here. And take a look. Not a single yellow marker, and yellow is of course Ukrainian defensive lines. Right? So they've pushed up in this area here where you have these defenses, absolutely along here, and along Komar, I think the town is, and some other towns here. And then they've tried to come up here. Right? where there's very few defenses, and then now they're stuck. They're stuck on the river, or they've come up south of it, but they've tried to push through these empty spaces, and now they're stuck. I'm thinking maybe we'll see them push out into this empty space as well eventually, but it kind of suggests that, you know, the Russians did manage to advance because they found these open spaces. But I'm curious, and why would Ukraine leave these wide open spaces with very few defensive positions? Did they mess up, or was it intentional? Was this a place where they had lots of mines, pre-sighted every piece of terrain for artillery to strike, and also when they were moving, take a look, they were moving past all of these defenses right here along the entire river. They must have taken so much fire from the north, the Russians, as they were pushing past Batyr, trying to come up this way. So I'm thinking, yeah, this might, maybe, I mean, there's no guarantees. So the Vatn's going, oh, it's copium and hopium. But I mean, why would Ukraine leave these wide open spots, positions? Right? Makes no sense. There must be a reason, there must be a plan for it. And I'm thinking that plan, I think, is that the river, that bend there even? Could that be it? This river, could that be? I don't know. But as you can see, anyway, it's, I think it is. I don't think the Russians over here. Or are they? I think they're over here. At any rate, it's quite obvious that Russia has followed the path of least resistance, and that in itself makes it relatively easy to predict the Russians. They spend months trying to fight through spaces like this, but in a couple of weeks they can move here, and that means you know where they're going to go, you know where they're going to push. That means you know where you need to aim artillery to catch them in the open. I'm thinking this has been a massive kill zone, and the Russians walked straight into it. And we can see the exact same thing when we're talking about Pokrovsk and Myrnorod. This is Pokrovsk right here, and Myrnorod right next to it. This pocket that we've been talking about is this pocket. So as you can see, the Russians pushed north. This massive breakthrough that the pro-Russians are talking about. They're pushing out this way. Take a look. Wide open spaces. They're struggling with this defensive line, but they're moving up towards the lakes here, right? Very few Ukrainian defensive positions, and still, despite this, the Russians are struggling. You can see here while they're struggling, pushing out of Toretsk. And here, they reached the Ukrainian defensive line and shifted west to the river and came across, and now they've moved through these areas where you have few defensive lines. That defensive line, is that located here? Is that why Ukraine is holding on? Because you have this massive fortification in this pocket? Could that be it? Is that why they're not leaving? Maybe. But yeah, as you can see, if this is a trend, then when Russia faces these massive fortifications, that they shift direction and head into areas where there's not as many defensive lines. They are deliberately choosing the path of least resistance. That means they are easily predicted, that you can guide them into kill zones, and you can absolutely destroy them because you know where they're gonna go. You can have areas, massive amounts of minefields in place, and just wait for the Russians to show up, and then just send in every drone and artillery shell you have available to wipe them out, which might explain why they're not pushing further. They come into the kill zone, They're trying to get across the river, hunted down by drones. They can't push further west because this is, constantly, there's a constant artillery barrage, relatively speaking, aimed at the area and what have you. So I'm thinking, I mean, take a look. There are deliberate pockets here, all over the place. This must be intentional from the Ukrainians. And the Russians are stepping right into these areas where I'm thinking Ukraine, this is where the Ukrainians want them. This is where Ukraine wants the Russians to go. This is where Ukraine wants to fight, essentially. Hope, copium. I'm willing to admit that this is delving into copium. It could be that Ukraine has fucked up and have not built proper defensive lines, and Russia is exploiting it, snaking their way through the Ukrainian defenses to achieve success, and exploiting weaknesses and gaps in the Ukrainian defensive lines. But I know, take a look at this wide open. This is like a funnel. It's almost as if the Ukrainians are asking the Russians to move through here, right into this pocket. I'm leaning towards Russia is, they're walking into one kill zone after the other. And that's it. I hope you found it interesting. I hope I'll see you in the next one. As always, go på marsch, Ukraine, and give them hell.